Welcome to another good old video by your good old friend, Matthew. So I find myself today making a part 3 for my philosophy of truth, which is quite okay. And the fact that I keep making more parts actually speaks to the theme that I want to address today, which is something like endlessness in terms of truth. Gertrude Stein, I'm sure many of you have heard of Gertrude Stein. She was a very interesting writer and figure in general, and she wrote some very unusual and experimental prose poetry and poetry in general and prose in general. She had a quote, and that quote said, "Descriptions are endless." And that's a very simple line, but it's always stuck with me, and it relates to what I want to say today, which is, yes, descriptions are endless. Ways of talking about anything are endless, and therefore, ways of talking about the truth are endless. And let me be more specific about what I mean there. So, I teach English classes, mainly college freshmen, but in other contexts as well, writing and composition and literature, that sort of thing. And many years ago, when I first started teaching, I would bring a solo cup to the front of the room, or I would have it in the front of the room, and I would place that solo cup on an empty desk, and I would write the word truth on the cup, on the outside of the cup. And depending on a student's literal point of view, like where they were in the class, they would see parts of that cup, right? They might see a couple letters of the word truth. They might see the whole word truth. They might only see one letter of the word truth. They might have a little bit of a view of the top and inside the cup. They might not be able to see inside the cup at all, right? And you get the point, right? Depending on a person's angle and perspective, they're only seeing part of the cup of truth. And of course, I would encourage students and make the point that they could stand up and try to look at every single aspect of the cup possible. They could pick the cup up and look at the bottom. They could look inside it. They could spin it around and try to see every detail of the cup possible. And I think that sort of practice is very empowering and important when it comes to our discovery and cultivation of truth and embodiment of truth. And so, for example, if I wanted to understand the reality of Los Angeles as it exists today, right? There are so many endless criteria and categories that I could use as entry points into understanding Los Angeles as one example, right? The reality of Los Angeles. I could look at all of the different histories, of Los Angeles. I could look at all the neighborhoods, and not only all the neighborhoods, I could look at kind of the income level of the people in those neighborhoods. I could look at the prices of housing and rent in those neighborhoods, and not only the income level or the prices, but also the people themselves, right? I could talk to the people. I could talk to people on the sidewalk. I could talk to people in public, in general, on the buses. I could meet people in various ways. I could get to know the people of Los Angeles. And of course, the people of Los Angeles, that's a multifaceted thing as well, right? There's such a plurality of types of people in Los Angeles. And a lot of times, people who haven't spent much time there or any time there falsely assume that the people of Los Angeles is kind of just one type of person, right? But obviously, getting to know the actual people is more intimate and direct and real than just trying to understand them by looking at a piece of paper or a document. The embodied, on the ground experience of any given thing is extremely important. And not only that, but relatedly, there can be kind of abstract truth, and this relates to my first video, but there can be abstract truth and there can be embodied truth. There can also be different kind of tools or modes of engaging with the truth, right? You can do it through intuition or emotions or, that tangible pre-intellectual experience. And you can also do it intellectually and abstractly and kind of academically, right? And all modes can foster, different kinds of truth. But I guess I do want to make the point that there's no rush to formulate our conception of the truth. I think it's important to have the desire for truth rather than being okay with manipulation or, delusion or illusion. These things, I think it is important to desire the truth, but we don't have to rush and fixate on trying to figure out the truth in all these different ways necessarily, unless you're somebody like me and I get pleasure exploring that sort of thing. But I think it can also have a shadow side, and it's important to slow down and sit with reality as it is, which you could say is the most true, at least the most true starting point. I could look at the architecture, right? I could look at the climate of Los Angeles. I could look at the relationship of LA to other cities in California. I could, I could look at LA through a sociological, racial, anthropological, artistic, architectural, environmental, there's many different criteria and categories that I could use to understand, or even you could say assess or evaluate the truth or reality of LA. And so the descriptions would be endless in that regard, you could say, right? And I think that that's true. I just think that sort of thing is true. That is the reality of the situation. And I think it can be it can make our understanding of the truth or of reality more transversal, right? Because as I define transversality, it is the practice or state of multiple criteria being fulfilled at once, right? So to have the most transversal understanding of LA, for example, you need to look at, the more categories and the more criteria you use to understand LA, and that you use to understand anything, then the more transversal your understanding is, right? And I'm a fan of trying to make things as transversal as possible. So I think that is an aspect of truth that is very important to realize and remember. And I suppose lastly, in relation to all of that, reality itself, or the cosmos in its totality, you could say that totality is it's the most transversal state or version of reality that we can possibly conceive of. The totality of reality that includes everything that exists, including our thoughts and things that are metaphysical. We could describe it in endless ways, but theoretically we could never have every possible criteria, perhaps, to understand the totality of that true being, the totality of all reality. And that relates to what I was saying before. So yes, that's kind of the main angle I wanted to bring in today as we deepen our understanding of the truth. So until next time, peace out.